You play basketball 2.5 hours a day, 3 hours a day. That's your job. That's what you get paid to do as an NBA player.
10 seconds. That's all it took. 10 seconds on a podcast for Anthony Edwards to dismiss an entire generation of basketball greatness. 10 seconds to wipe out Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Isiah Thomas, men who bled, sacrificed, and shaped the very foundation of the sport Edwards now profits from. 10 seconds from a player who, by his own admission, never even watched the tape. And the basketball world? It erupted. But here's the thing most people missed. While the internet was busy arguing about it on social media, Michael Jordan was already moving. Not on Twitter, not on Instagram. Quietly, surgically. The way he always operated when someone stepped into his world and said the wrong thing. What Jordan did next didn't just embarrass Anthony Edwards. It exposed something much deeper. A flaw in the entire modern system of basketball success. A flaw that Jordan believes is slowly hollowing out the game he loves more than anything he's ever known. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see this situation in a completely different light. And I promise you, it's going to change how you look at not just Edwards, but an entire generation of players wearing crowns they haven't fully earned yet. The comment that started a war. Let's go back to where it all began. Anthony Edwards, one of the most electrifying players in the NBA today, was sitting on a podcast, relaxed, confident, talking basketball. And then he said this, "Didn't watch it back in the day, so I can't speak on it. They say it was tougher back then than it is now, but I don't think anybody had skill back then. Michael Jordan was the only one that really had skill. So that's why when they saw Kobe, they were like, oh my God. But now everybody has skill." Read that again. He said he didn't watch the footage. Then, in the very next breath, he passed judgment on an entire era of basketball. Think about how staggering that is. Edwards essentially told the world, without a single piece of evidence, without watching a single game, without studying a single highlight, that Larry Bird had no skill, that Magic Johnson had no skill, that Hakeem, the man with footwork so refined they named it the Dream Shake, had no skill, that Isiah Thomas, a man Jordan once called the toughest player he ever faced, had no skill. Now here's a question I want you to genuinely sit with for a second and drop your answer in the comments. If you had never watched a single game from any era, would you feel confident enough to say nobody from that era could play, or would you stay quiet? Because that's the decision Edwards made. And it set off a chain reaction he clearly wasn't prepared for. The internet caught fire immediately. Former players, analysts, fans, everyone had an opinion. It was loud, it was messy, it was everywhere. But Michael Jordan? He didn't pick up his phone and fire off a tweet. He didn't go on ESPN to clap back. He didn't post a highlight reel on Instagram. He did something far more dangerous. He made a phone call. Jordan's surgical strike. See, what most people don't know is that Jordan had already been paying attention to Edwards long before that podcast. He'd been watching film. He'd been asking questions. He'd been talking to people inside the Minnesota Timberwolves organization, the very organization that employs Edwards. And what he found wasn't a young lion ready to inherit the league. What he found was a gap, a very specific, very telling gap. When Jordan finally got on camera and addressed the situation publicly, he didn't yell, he didn't argue. He pulled out information, the most devastating weapon in the entire conversation, and he used it like a scalpel. I had a conversation this summer with a high executive at Minnesota, and he was talking about Anthony Edwards. I heard during the course of the year that they were double-teaming him, and he didn't know how to deal with the double team. Let that land for a moment. The player calling legends unskilled couldn't solve a double team. Now, let me put this in perspective for anyone who might think that's a minor detail. The double team is not some advanced chess move reserved for playoff basketball. The double team is basketball 101. It is the first real defensive test that every superstar encounters the moment a defense decides they have to stop them. The moment a team double teams you, they are paying you a compliment. They're saying one defender isn't enough, but they're also issuing a challenge. Now what? Magic Johnson mastered it with passes so precise they looked like they came from a GPS. Larry Bird beat it with basketball IQ so high he often made his decision before the double team even arrived. Michael Jordan beat it with footwork, body control, and a mid-range game so automatic that help defenders were helpless. These were the men Edwards called unskilled. And Jordan, who stared down double teams every single night for over a decade in the most physical era the league has ever seen, used that one word, simple, to make his point. He called it simple. Not complicated, not nuanced, simple. He wanted that word to echo, and it did. But Jordan wasn't done, because the double team was only the entry point. What he said next goes much deeper. And this is where the conversation stops being about Anthony Edwards specifically and becomes about something every basketball fan needs to hear. The game is being cheated. Jordan looked directly into the camera and said something that, if you really listen to it, is one of the most honest and painful observations about modern basketball that has ever been made publicly. The kids today, they're being given things that they haven't earned. They think the game is being cheated because of the success that's being given prior to them earning it. Simple as that. The game is being cheated. Those 4 words are not a throwaway line. That is Michael Jordan, a man who earned every dollar, every trophy, every logo, telling you exactly what he sees when he looks at the current landscape of the NBA. Anthony Edwards came into the league and, before he had won a single championship, before he had solved a double team, before he had carried a franchise to a title, he had a max contract worth hundreds of millions. He had a signature shoe deal. He had commercials. He had a brand. He had the hype machine working at full capacity. And Jordan is asking a very simple, very important question. When the reward comes before the work, what happens to the hunger? Think about that seriously for a second. Because this isn't about being bitter or old-fashioned. This is about human psychology. This is about what happens to a person's drive when they already have everything before they've done the thing that's supposed to earn them everything. Jordan himself was explicit about this. He said, "It's hard to be hungry when you have. If you don't have, you are willing to do whatever you need to have." That's not a complicated idea. That's a truth as old as competition itself. The fighter who's never had to fight for anything fights differently than the one who grew up with nothing and decided basketball was his way out. Bird grew up in French Lick, Indiana, a tiny town with more cornfields than streetlights. He spent hours, not minutes, not an afternoon, hours alone in a gym. No coaches, no cameras, nobody watching, just a basketball and a level of obsession that would be considered borderline unhealthy by today's standards. He said it himself. "My confidence came from shooting basketball by myself for hours upon hours. I didn't pick up a ball on a Saturday and decide I was going to score 40 a game. That preparation came way before that. I put my time in. No personal brand, no Nike deal before the season started, no guarantee of anything. Just a kid in Indiana who outworked every single person alive because he had to." And here's the question I want you to think about honestly, and seriously, leave your take in the comments because this one matters. Do you think players today work as hard as Jordan and Bird? Or has the system genuinely changed the motivation? I'm not looking for a hot take. I want your real opinion. Because this isn't a simple yes or no. This is a conversation about incentives, about culture, about what the modern NBA has become. Brand Jordan versus Brand Edwards. Now here's where Jordan gets really specific and really unflinching. He acknowledged something that most people in his position would never admit, that he is part of the reason everyone tries to get a logo deal now. He helped create the culture of player branding. Brand Jordan changed everything. It proved that an athlete could become more than an athlete, that the right combination of greatness and marketability could produce something that transcended sport entirely. But then he drew a line, a very clear, very deliberate line. The brand is established based on what I did on the basketball court. I didn't put the brand before I put the work. I put the work first, and then the brand evolved based on the work. That is the entire argument in 2 sentences. Jordan didn't get famous and then become great. He became great, completely, dominantly, historically great, and fame was the unavoidable consequence. 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, a decade of performance so relentless that the brand didn't just make sense, it was inevitable. Edwards is talented, and I want to be clear, nobody serious is disputing that. Ant-Man has the kind of physical gifts and natural charisma that come around maybe once every 10 years. He can score, he can create, he's already one of the most watchable players in the league. But he got the logo before the championships. He got the max contract before the titles. He got the commercials before he led a team to a finals. And then he sat on a podcast and told the world that the men who built everything he's profiting from had no skill. That's what set Jordan off. Not the disrespect alone. Jordan has heard disrespect before and crushed it on the court. What bothered him was the specific combination, the unearned platform being used to dismiss earned legacy. That's a different kind of wrong. The love of game clause. But nothing in this entire situation reveals the difference between these two eras more clearly than one detail from Jordan's contract that most people have completely forgotten. Jordan had a clause written into his Chicago Bulls contract called the Love of the Game clause. It stated that if Jordan was driving down a random street anywhere on the planet, saw a pickup basketball game happening on a court, pulled over, and played, and got hurt doing it, his contract was still fully guaranteed. He would still receive every dollar owed to him. Read that back. He negotiated the right to risk a $100 million career on a random pickup game because the idea of someone telling him he couldn't play basketball for any reason at any time was simply not acceptable to him.
The game of basketball today, because that's who I am. That's that type of competition, that type of competitiveness is.
Jordan said, "I love the game so much that I would never let someone take the opportunity for me to play the game away from me." Compare that to the modern reality he described. Players today who won't play pickup basketball because they have individual workout sessions with personal trainers, because they have to protect their bodies, because the insurance and the contracts and the brand deals all demand a certain level of physical preservation. Jordan isn't saying those players are bad people. He's saying they have a fundamentally different relationship with the game. And when you have a different relationship with the game, you see the game differently. You talk about the game differently. You evaluate the game differently. A player who would risk his entire contract just to play a pickup game at 10 p.m. in a parking lot somewhere is going to have a very different opinion of what skill looks like than a player who treats basketball primarily as a career. And now let me ask you another question. This one's important. Would you have included a love of the game clause in your contract? Or would you protect your investment? There's no wrong answer here. Drop it in the comments. Because this isn't about who's right. It's about understanding two completely different philosophies about what basketball is supposed to be. What Unskilled actually looked like. Now let's talk about what Larry Bird actually did on a basketball court. Because if you've never seen it, and clearly Anthony Edwards hasn't, you need to understand what Edwards dismissed so casually. Larry Bird didn't just score on defenders. He didn't just shoot jumpers and drive to the basket. He did something that no player before or since has done at the same level. He told defenders exactly what he was about to do, and then did it anyway while they stood there helpless. Not once, not twice, repeatedly, to the best defenders in the world, on the biggest stages, in the biggest moments. One former player described guarding Bird this way. He told me, "Young fella, let me tell you something. I can shoot a jumper anywhere I want to. You're supposed to be a great defender. I'm going to make sure I tell you where I'm going to shoot the ball." So he went right to that corner. I'm up on him. And he said, "Young fella, what did I tell you I was going to do?" And he turned around, raised up, and I said, "I ain't going to mess with you no more. Coldest dude I ever seen." Read that. Really read it. Elite defender. Told exactly where it's happening. Still couldn't stop it. But Bird didn't just psychologically dismantle people during the game.
For 13 years, So they've been there forever. They knew the game. They love the game of basketball.
He talked trash with a level of specificity that was almost supernatural. Another defender remembered this exchange. He shot a three and said, "I don't know where they got you guarding me, Holmes." I was pissed. He said, "Hey, Rook, I like you. You got balls, but I'm still going to get 30 on your ass." He got about 38. He promised 30. He delivered 38 and called it close enough. And one of the most jaw-dropping Bird moments happened in a game with 5 seconds left. Bird told the defender, to his face, exactly where the shot was coming from. Then he hit it. Then he apologized. Why? Because he left 2 seconds on the clock instead of hitting a buzzer beater like he intended. The man was annoyed at himself for not being precise enough while doing something no one else could do at all. This is the player Anthony Edwards in 10 seconds called Unskilled. And here's the thing. Players who went into the league talking trash about Bird came back changed. One veteran told his friends before his first season that Bird was overrated. After the first few weeks, he called home and said, "All that trash you were talking about Bird, you need to squash all that. This man is great. Whatever you were saying, for a man who can't jump, he's demolishing everybody. He's doing it on the best defensive players in the league." That's not hype. That's what actually happened. Over and over, season after season, to the best players in the world. Kevin Garnett drops the hammer. Jordan wasn't the only legend who heard Edwards and felt the need to respond. Kevin Garnett, a man who played in both the old physical era and the modern game, stepped in with zero hesitation. KG didn't sugarcoat a single word. He addressed Edwards by name. He addressed Jason Tatum by name. He addressed the entire generation. And he said, "If I'm being honest, I don't think anybody in this generation could have played 20 years ago. This is to Ant. This is to everybody in our league. Tatum, all y'all, 20 years ago, you couldn't get to a triple step back. Then if you shot it, it had to go in. We had efficiency back in the day. It was so hard. It was too physical." Now that is a different kind of statement than what Jordan said, and it's important to understand why. Jordan's critique was methodical. He used information, specific weaknesses, and precise language to make his point. KG's was a gut punch from a player who lived in the physical hell of the 90s and early 2000s NBA and survived it. KG is essentially saying the rules, the officiating, the physicality, all of it was fundamentally different. The game that Bird, Jordan, Magic, Hakeem, and KG himself played was closer to combat than the modern version. Hand-checking was legal. Moving screens were tolerated. Defenders could put a body on you in ways that today's game simply doesn't allow. Could Anthony Edwards score 29 a game in that environment? Maybe. He's that talented. But the question KG is raising isn't about talent. It's about what that talent would look like under conditions that would have tested every aspect of his game, including the double team he couldn't figure out. And I need you to weigh in on this one directly. Do you think today's stars, Edwards, Luka, Tatum, would have thrived in the 90s NBA? Be specific in the comments. I want real basketball arguments, not just loyalty. Bird's response and the standard of class. What makes this whole situation even more striking is how Larry Bird himself responded. No anger, no lengthy interview, no social media war, just quiet, measured class from a man who has absolutely nothing to prove. Bird said, "I like the game that's played now. I respect the players. We had our run, and this is their time, and this is how they like to play their game. But I'm glad I played in the 80s because it was more physical. You could feel and hold and grab." That's it. That's the response from the man who was called Unskilled. No victimhood, no bitterness, no clout chasing, and Magic Johnson put the final seal on it with a line that needs to be written in stone somewhere. Most guys talk trash and can't back it up, but Mr. Bird, you can bag your trash talking up. Larry Bird said there would be another Larry Bird one day. There will never, ever, ever be another Larry Bird. Think about what Magic is really saying there. He played against Bird his entire career. He competed against him in some of the most iconic finals matchups in NBA history. He wanted to beat him more than almost anything.
His company, Magic Johnson Enterprises, has become an economic superstar as well.
And at the end of it all, Magic Johnson says there will never be another Larry Bird. Not maybe, not probably. Never, ever. That's coming from the man who competed with Bird the most directly. That's the ultimate measure of respect. And it's coming at a time when a player who has never faced Bird, never watched Bird, never studied Bird, just wrote him off in 10 seconds on a podcast. What Jordan is really protecting. I want to be completely clear about something, because I think it's important not to misread Jordan's motivation here. This is not about an old man trying to win an argument against a 23-year-old. This isn't about ego or legacy protection. Jordan is well past needing either of those things. This is about obligation. Jordan said it plainly. I have an obligation to the game of basketball. Not financially, I'm okay. More or less as a basketball player, to be able to pass on messages of success and dedication to the game. Still love it like you wouldn't believe. Jordan feels a debt to the game, to the people who came before him who built the foundation he stood on, to the standard that made the NBA what it is, and he sees that standard eroding, not just in Edwards specifically, but in a system that hands out rewards before the receipts are in. The love of the game clause wasn't just a contract detail, it was a statement of identity. Jordan at 42 sat in an interview and said he genuinely believed he could still play in the NBA and contribute. That's not delusion. That's what happens when you give yourself completely to something for decades. It doesn't switch off, it becomes who you are. Bird spent hours in a gym alone, not because someone told him to, not because a trainer was watching, not because a brand deal required it, because basketball was his entire world and he refused to stop getting better at it. The preparation came long before anyone was paying attention. That's what Jordan is defending. Not a statistic, not a ring count, a relationship with the game itself, the kind that produces mastery so complete it looks effortless, that produces confidence so deep you can telegraph your next move to an elite defender and still make him look helpless. The verdict. So where does this all leave us? Anthony Edwards is gifted. Nobody seriously argues otherwise. He has the potential, the raw, physical, God-given potential, to be one of the greatest players of his generation. He's already one of the most exciting to watch. But excitement and greatness are not the same thing. Being watchable and being dominant are not the same thing. What Edwards revealed in that podcast moment wasn't stupidity, it was ignorance. And there's a difference. Stupidity is permanent. Ignorance can be corrected. He said himself he never watched the tape. The correction is simple. Watch the tape. Study the men who built the foundation you're standing on. Understand what came before you. Not because you have to bow to it, but because you can't properly understand where you are if you don't know where it all started. Jordan mastered the double team. Bird mastered the psychological warfare of elite competition. Hakeem mastered footwork so complex, it's still being taught in NBA skill academies today. Magic mastered the orchestration of an entire offense from the point guard position. These were not unskilled men. These were craftsmen. They sacrificed things normal people enjoy: time, youth, the freedom of not caring, so they could operate at a level that is still referenced as a standard today. And the real tragedy of Edwards' comment isn't that he disrespected legends, it's that he robbed himself of the opportunity to learn from them. Because if you don't think Bird had skill, you'll never try to develop the kind of skill Bird had. And if you never develop that kind of skill, you'll never know what you could have been. Jordan closed it perfectly, and if you take nothing else from this video, take this. Basketball and your love for basketball should always be pure. We would play this game for free. We did. And then, we just so happened to get paid for it. That sentence is the whole argument. They played it for free first.
Michael Jordan has played over the last year. I don't know if you even realize this, Michael, but 126 games, all things added up there.
The money was a consequence of the love, not the other way around. The brand was a consequence of the dominance, not the other way around. When you reverse that order, when the money comes before the mastery, when the brand comes before the championship, the game gets cheated. Not just the players who came before, the game itself. And that's what Michael Jordan is standing up to protect. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean really hear from you. Was Jordan too hard on Edwards? Or did someone need to say this out loud? Drop your take in the comments. I want the real debate, not just the hot take. And if someone you know needs to watch this, a fan, a young player, someone who only follows the modern game, send this to them, because this conversation matters beyond the drama. Hit the like button if you think Jordan made his point without even raising his voice. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns where we go deep, go honest, and go beyond the highlight reel. Because the standard that built this game is still worth defending, and Jordan just reminded the whole world why.